Egypt will start trading on its first commodities exchange within the next 36 to 48 weeks. The country's stock exchange said in October that it will form a joint venture with the supply ministry to manage a commodities exchange for spot trading of commodities with large markets. The commodities to be traded initially include wheat, sugar, corn, and rice that can be produced locally or imported. Shareholders in the new exchange will include the General Authority for Supply Commodities, Internal Trade Development Authority, the Egyptian Holding Company for Silos and Storage, and the Egyptian Stock Exchange. Egypt has for years long considered setting up a commodities exchange. In 2016, the Supply Ministry said commodities trading would include agricultural produce as well as oil and gold. And South Sudan plans to launch a tender for a comprehensive environmental audit of all its oil-producing fields on a bid to reduce pollution following years of neglect. Oil sales bring in almost all the revenue of the East African nation, which has boosted output to stand at about 180,000 barrels per day in October as it struggles to rebuild an economy shattered by 5 years of civil war. But with the petroleum sector historically causing a loss of grazing land, soil and water contamination as well as other health risks in and around oil-producing areas, the government wants to strengthen enforcement and regulatory oversight. Petroleum Minister said the environmental audit will be conducted ahead of any new exploration and drilling in South Sudan, which wants to ramp up production and intends to offer 14 new oil blocks for exploration in a licensing round early in 2020. Now, the World Bank is the first key institution to cut its economic growth forecast for South Africa to below 1% for 2020 due to electricity supply concerns. It now expects the economy to expand by 0.9% this year. That compares with an estimate of 1% in its Africa Pulse report released in October and is well below government forecasts. Its outlook for Africa's most industrialized economy is markedly weaker because it sees electricity supply and infrastructure constraints inhibiting domestic growth, with weaker global economic conditions weighing on export demand. Well, South Africa's state utility Eskom scaled back power cuts on Friday after bringing some generating units back online, while reiterating that the system remained vulnerable due to breakdowns. Well, let's see what the week in South Africa has been like. Let's talk to my colleague there, Katleho Lehodi. Hello, Katleho. Good afternoon. Good to have you on the show again. So, what is the situation with your electricity supply there?
A very good afternoon to you. Well, Eskom is seemingly failing to keep the lights on, and that is the situation on the ground as we speak. It implemented stage 2 of load shedding well into the night last night, ending it off at 6 o'clock this morning, only to move it back to stage 1 load shedding that is currently playing out as we speak. What we're hearing on the ground is that the president was misled when Eskom told him that there won't be any load shedding from the 17th of December well into January, this being the 13th of January, and that didn't play out because as we speak, load shedding is currently playing out. That's coming out from the Deputy President, David Mabuza, at the ANC's 108th anniversary celebration in Kimberley, the Northern Cape.
Now, the World Bank has cut its economic growth forecast for the country to below 1%. How are the economists and investors there analyzing this report?
Well, the move by the World Bank has mainly been attributed to the lack of adequate electricity supply by Eskom. That is actually the main sticking point in terms of what is dragging down the country's economy. Well, the bank says the country's economy has been sluggish in its growth, and it is predicted to grow at less than 1% in 2020. On the ground, economists have cited that this is a bad move for an economy that has been battered for at least a decade or so for now, and then they described Eskom as the biggest threat to South Africa's economy, and this as investors as well, calling on the president and his administration to ramp up structural reforms and address policy uncertainty as to help an ailing economy if South Africa is to reach that 1.2 trillion rand in investments, that ambition that the president announced in the past few months.
Now, data released on Thursday showed manufacturing output fell by about 3.6% year-on-year in November after contracting by 0.8% in October. How are the markets, both currency and equities, reading this data the morning after?
Well, the rand hasn't been doing well. If I must say, starting on Monday, it has been battered. It has traded steadily overnight. If we look at what came out, looking at the manufacturing data output, well, year on year in November, after contracting 0.8% in October, this has been attributed as well to load shedding and domestic data that fails to provide the basis for optimism where the rand is concerned. The rand was quoted at 0.29%, at weaker at 14.19 to the US dollar. Well, now traders are looking to important US jobs data that is due later, and then they hope that this will see the rand trading at least between 14.10 to 14.35 to the US dollar.
Well, it's the first major business week for the new year. How would you say businesses have kick-started the year aside from the electricity challenges?
Been a great start to the year for businesses. This as the electricity challenge, the country's power challenge continues. Most business people, traders are coming out frustrated that, that we were given a briefing room in December when the president said there won't be any load shedding and that there was a plan in place. But that hasn't been the case. As businesses opened their doors to the new year, they saw that, most of them, if you can remember, they were counting losses from the load shedding that played out, prolonged load shedding that played out in November, December, and then they were hopeful that the festive season would come as a relief, with most people having to go shop. But this was not the case this year, as most people opted not to go, and splurge and spend most, in the festive season compared to the previous years, and this hasn't actually boosted confidence where businesses are concerned. And now, they're still calling on Eskom and government to include businesses in their talks to help, the ailing, power utility Eskom. But I must say, most of them are just fairly, optimistic that hopefully this year would prove to be better as government continues with its promises of, plans that are.
Right, Ketleho, just before I let you go, what's going into next week? What are the expectations?
Well, going into next week, the first full trading week of the year has so far proven to be a bumpy one, following clashes between U.S. and Iran. The rand has been under pressure, as I correctly stated earlier on. That is expected to continue well into the coming week. Brexit and the U.S.-China trade war as well has implications in terms of how the rand performs, and we'll be looking at that also. As we know that Brexit and the U.S.-China trade war remains the market influencers. So going into the new week, we'll be keeping a close eye on that, and also we'll be keeping a close eye on what is happening at Eskom. As most of people are just putting plans in place to safeguard their businesses, just to ensure that they don't incur further losses from the rotating load shedding that has been playing out in South Africa.
Absolutely. Ketleho, we'll keep an eye on those. Thank you for your time and enjoy the rest of the day. And it's on that note that we draw the curtain on today's edition of the program and, of course, for the week. Thank you for watching. I'm Chimezie Obi Iwagu.